There is a strange, almost counterintuitive truth about attraction that most men never understand. Women don't obsess over the man who endlessly tries to impress them. They obsess over the man who doesn't. The man who stays rooted in himself, comfortable in his skin, and detached from the need for validation becomes naturally magnetic without even trying. This is the version people mock as a loser, not because he actually lacks value, but because he refuses to perform for approval. And it's this refusal that creates emotional pull. Most men approach women from a place of anxiety. They worry about being liked, being enough, being chosen. They overthink their messages, over-polish their words, and over-explain their intentions. But this constant need to be accepted makes them forget the simplest truth. Attraction grows strongest when a woman senses that you do not need her to validate you. The so-called loser who doesn't chase, doesn't please, and doesn't beg for attention stands out because he is not emotionally enslaved by the outcome. When a man isn't operating from insecurity, his energy shifts completely. Instead of asking, does she like me? He silently holds the frame of, does this connection feel aligned for me? That shift alone puts him in the top 1% of men women think about. Not because he's acting arrogant or distant, but because his sense of worth is internal, not borrowed from her reactions. Women can feel this instantly. They feel it in his tone, his body language, his calmness. He's not performing. He's not measuring himself. He's simply present, grounded, and unbothered. This is the masculine energy that draws women in without them even realizing why. It makes them feel safe, yet curious, comfortable, yet challenged, seen but not controlled. And here's where the paradox becomes powerful. When a woman senses that he is not seeking her approval, she naturally begins giving it. Not because he manipulates her into it, but because she feels compelled to invest in the connection. She leans in, she initiates conversations. She wonders what he's thinking. She grows intrigued by his stillness, by his lack of urgency, by his emotional independence. The man who doesn't chase validation becomes intriguing because he has something most men don't: self-possession, a settled spirit, a mind that doesn't panic with silence, a heart that doesn't collapse at the possibility of rejection. He is okay with things going well, and equally okay if they don't. This detachment is not coldness, it is maturity. And maturity creates attraction far more reliably than charm ever will. It's not that he's careless, it's that he cares about the right things. He cares about authenticity, mutual respect, natural chemistry. He cares about how he feels around her as much as how she feels around him. And that mindset removes the power imbalance that often destroys early attraction. Instead of giving her the role of judge, he meets her as an equal. That equality builds fascination. What truly separates him is that he's not running a race. He's moving at the pace of life, grounded in who he is, carrying an energy that says, I don't need to fit into your expectations, I live by my own. And that is the type of presence women don't forget. One of the most misunderstood dynamics in dating, and one that turns an ordinary man into someone a woman thinks about all day, is this: the man who isn't competing for her attention becomes the man whose attention she starts competing for. This is where the so-called loser becomes unexpectedly powerful. Not because he's flashy, dominant, or trying aggressively to stand out, but because he isn't fighting for a place in her world. Instead, he lets her naturally gravitate toward him. Most men sabotage attraction because they fight too hard. They believe they need to win her interest through effort, constant texting, over-complimenting, over-explaining, proving their worth. In doing so, they eliminate the one thing that drives real fascination, the sense that he chooses where he invests his energy. The man who isn't scrambling for her time creates a quiet confidence that says, my presence has value, and I don't hand it out freely. That energy shifts the entire dynamic. Women aren't drawn to men who chase, they're drawn to men who carry themselves like their time has weight. Not with arrogance or dismissiveness, but with calm self-respect. When a man isn't competing, he's not desperate. He's not flustered by silence. He's not afraid of losing her because he knows that whoever belongs in his life will naturally stay. This is not manipulation, it's maturity. And that maturity creates gravity. Instead of thinking, how can I make her like me? He operates from a different place, Is this connection worth my energy? That subtle mental shift changes his tone, his choices, and his interactions. He no longer performs for approval. He evaluates compatibility. And women can sense this evaluation even when he doesn't explicitly say anything. A man like this doesn't rush to fill every moment with talking. He listens. He observes. He notices her energy, her intentions, her consistency. His presence feels grounded rather than needy, which allows her feminine energy, curiosity, desire, emotional exploration to awaken naturally. When a woman senses that his attention is not guaranteed, she becomes more intentional in how she engages with him. This is where attraction becomes something deeper. She starts putting effort into conversations. She thinks about what to say next. She wonders what he's doing and whether he's thinking about her. She begins investing psychologically, not because he plays games, but because he doesn't compete for her attention the way other men do. And ironically, this is what makes him unforgettable. He isn't fighting for her because he isn't fighting with himself. He's not trying to prove something, not trying to outshine other men, not trying to force chemistry. He lets things unfold naturally on his terms, at his pace. That surrender to authenticity creates an environment where she steps forward instead of him pushing. She feels valued not because he showers her with attention, but because when he does give his attention, it's intentional and meaningful. His presence doesn't feel scattered, it feels deliberate. And deliberate men stand out, especially in a world overflowing with men who chase impulsively. This man's power lies in what he doesn't do. He doesn't run after validation. He doesn't fear losing a woman who isn't aligned. He doesn't mold himself to fit her preferences. He simply exists in his own lane, waking up each day anchored in who he is. A woman thinks about a man like this because he gives her space to desire him on her own terms. And that's the most natural kind of attraction there is. One of the greatest hidden advantages the so-called loser possesses, the trait that makes women think about him all day long, is his complete lack of interest in validating himself through her reactions. He's not trying to impress her, convince her, or prove anything. And because he isn't seeking validation, he becomes a mystery she can't quite decode. This mystery is not built through games or manipulation. It's created because he genuinely doesn't operate from the same emotional script as the typical man. Most men enter dating with the mindset of, I hope she likes me. Every action, the good morning texts, the over-explaining, the compliments, the over-effort is rooted in seeking approval. They want confirmation that they're enough. Women can sense this instantly. It makes them feel like the man is trying to pull attraction out of them instead of inspiring it through his presence. But the man who isn't chasing validation, he's different. His worth isn't dependent on her interest. He isn't scanning her expressions to see if she's impressed. He isn't gauging his next move based on her immediate response. He is emotionally self-contained, and that is where the magnetic pull begins. Women don't become obsessed with men they fully understand. They become obsessed with men who make them feel something they can't fully define. The man who doesn't chase validation creates a quiet unpredictability. Not chaotic, not unstable, just a subtle sense that she cannot rid him completely. His emotions are not on the table like an open book. His intentions aren't announced through desperate actions. His interest is steady, but not overwhelming. And this creates emotional tension, the same tension that fuels desire. She wonders what he's thinking. She wonders how he feels. She wonders why he's not trying to win her approval like everyone else. She wonders why he's calm, grounded, and unbothered by whether or not she gives him attention. That curiosity alone becomes an emotional loop she revisits throughout the day. She thinks about him because he leaves room for her to fill in the gaps, and feminine psychology is built to fill emotional spaces with imagination. When a man doesn't seek validation, he interacts differently. He listens without needing to respond with something impressive. He asks questions that come from genuine interest, not from a desire to seem interesting. He doesn't overshare to gain sympathy or admiration. His presence is simple, natural, and unperformed. He isn't competing with other men. He isn't comparing himself. He just exists in his truth. This authenticity is rare, and rarity creates value. Women can feel when a man is being himself rather than acting out a role. They can sense emotional independence, a man who doesn't bend over backward to secure approval. That independence is interpreted as strength, even if the man doesn't look like the stereotypical alpha. Strength is not loud. Strength is self-contained. But here's the deeper layer: when a man doesn't chase validation, he creates safety. Not the soft, I'll do anything you want safety, but the stable masculine safety that says, I'm solid within myself. Women don't obsess over men who constantly react emotionally. They obsess over men who hold their internal structure steady no matter what's happening externally. And when she realizes his mood doesn't swing based on her behavior, she feels both intrigued and challenged. She can't manipulate his attention. She can't predict his reactions. She can't control the pace of the connection. And this unpredictability ignites her emotional investment. Suddenly, she starts checking his messages twice. She starts reading into his tone. She starts thinking about him in moments when she normally wouldn't. She starts replaying conversations, searching for meaning. She starts wondering how she can get closer to him because he's not giving her the validation that most men give away too easily. This is the paradox. The man who doesn't chase validation becomes the man whose validation she starts craving. And once she craves it, she can't stop thinking about him. One of the most powerful reasons women become attached to the so-called loser they think about all day is because he does something most men never learn. He controls the pace of the connection without announcing it, forcing her to naturally follow his emotional rhythm. This doesn't happen through dominance, manipulation, or coldness. It happens because he simply refuses to let the speed of the relationship be dictated by feminine pressure, emotional intensity, or society's expectations. Most men rush. They rush to prove they're worthy. They rush to show commitment. They rush to escalate. They rush because they're terrified of losing the woman. They misinterpret her interest as a countdown timer that might expire if they don't act fast enough. That rushing kills the emotional polarity women crave. But the man women obsess over, he doesn't rush for anyone. He moves slowly, steadily, and on his own terms. His pace is intentional. His presence is relaxed. His decisions are measured. He's not trying to lock anything in, but he's also not avoiding intimacy. He simply moves according to what feels authentic and grounded to him, and this calm pacing creates a gravitational pull she can't resist. When a man sets the pace, something fascinating happens inside her psychology. She starts matching him, not because he forces her, but because she finds comfort in the stability he provides. Women may initiate intensity. They may push for emotional speed. They may try to test a man's desire by creating situations that provoke reactions. But they don't want a man who gets sucked into their emotional current. They want a man who stands firm and makes them feel anchored. This controlled pace communicates something deeply masculine. I'm not afraid to lose you, and I'm not in a hurry to win you. That single message is incredibly seductive. It tells her he is not emotionally chaotic. It tells her he values himself. It tells her he leads with intention. It tells her he is selective, not desperate. And suddenly, she becomes more invested. She starts wondering why he's not rushing. She starts wondering what he's thinking. She starts wondering how he feels. She starts wondering what makes him so calm compared to the fast-paced, anxious men she usually encounters. This curiosity transforms into obsession. She thinks about him during the day because she is trying to understand him. She replays the slowed down moments because they create emotional texture. And emotional texture is what makes a woman attach: the space, the silence, the gradual unfolding, not the rushed intensity men often force. The slow pace also gives her brain room to build desire. Desire does not grow in chaos, it grows in anticipation. When he doesn't immediately reply, she thinks about him. When he doesn't instantly plan the next meet up, she fantasizes about it. When he doesn't overshare, she wants to know more. When he doesn't jump at her hints, she becomes more deliberate in signaling interest. He becomes mentally stimulating because he isn't predictable. And pacing is a major part of unpredictability. Not the childish unpredictability of hot and cold behavior, not the manipulative unpredictability of playing games, but the masculine unpredictability of a man who stays rooted in his own tempo. This tempo is magnetic. It creates an emotional atmosphere where she feels both safe and excited, the perfect balance that keeps her thinking about him long after conversations end. When he's with her, he's present, grounded, and attentive. When he's not with her, he's confidently investing in his life. This contrast creates a pendulum effect, a rhythm that her emotions naturally start following. And when a woman starts moving according to a man's emotional rhythm, she invests deeper than she intended. She begins to feel like the connection is unfolding organically, even though the real reason is that he's subtly leading the pace. In her mind, it feels like the relationship is naturally falling into place. In reality, she is following his lead without noticing. One of the deepest reasons a woman thinks about a man all day, especially the man she jokingly calls a loser, the one who somehow has a hold on her, is because he gives her something extremely rare in modern dating: emotional contrast. Not constant intensity, not constant validation, not constant availability, but a dynamic range of emotional experiences that make the connection feel alive, unpredictable, and impossible to copy, paste with another man. Most men give women one emotional flavor. They're either too eager, too dry, too logical, too available, too passive, too desperate, too serious, or too boringly stable. They operate on a single emotional note, and after a short time, that note becomes predictable. Predictability kills intrigue. Intrigue is oxygen for attraction, and when that oxygen runs out, her interest quietly suffocates. But the man she becomes attached to, the so-called loser, she secretly can't stop thinking about, he gives her range. He moves through different emotional energies effortlessly, making her feel something real every time she interacts with him. This emotional contrast is not manipulation. It's simply the natural result of a man who is deeply connected with himself and not trying to perform a specific personality to get her. Some days he's playful, teasing her, making her laugh without trying. Other days he's quiet, observant, almost mysterious. Sometimes he's deeply attentive, listening with full presence. Other times he's busy, focused, not rushing back with instant replies. Sometimes he gives her affection in a smooth, casual way. Other times he gives her space without guilt or explanation. This contrast creates a rhythm she feels in her chest, a rhythm she begins to crave without understanding why. Women don't attach to men who give them a flat emotional experience. They attach to men who create emotional texture: highs, lows, warmth, calmness, mystery, familiarity, and surprise, all woven together in one human being. She thinks about him because her brain is constantly processing the emotional waves he generates. Moments with him feel richer, deeper, and more vivid. She remembers the way he teased her because it made her feel alive. She remembers the quiet moments because they made her feel seen. She remembers the slightly unpredictable energy because it made the connection feel real, not scripted. Every emotional shift he brings subtly reinforces her desire because contrast creates memorability. When she tries replacing him with another man, she can't. Why? Because most men only offer one emotional dimension, while he offered a full spectrum. She remembers his calmness because it grounded her. She remembers his unpredictability because it excited her. She remembers his blunt honesty because it challenged her. She remembers his subtle affection because it reassured her. She remembers his masculine detachment because it intrigued her. She remembers his presence because it made her feel chosen. That mixture is addictive. Women don't obsess over perfection. They obsess over a man who makes them feel deeply. And emotional contrast is what takes a connection from interesting to memorable, from memorable to craved, and from craved to unforgettable. When a man naturally gives her this contrast, without forcing it, without outplaying games, simply by being a grounded masculine presence with emotional range, he becomes the one she compares everyone else to. Every guy she meets afterwards feels flat. Every conversation feels predictable. Every moment lacks that spark of tension and release, excitement and calm, mystery and comfort. In her mind, she keeps going back to him, not because she's trying to, but because no one else creates the same emotional experience. And that's why the loser she thinks about all day isn't a loser at all. He's the man who gave her the emotional contrast she didn't know she was starving for. One of the most misunderstood aspects of female attraction And the reason women get emotionally hooked on certain men they later label as the loser they can't forget is that these men are completely, unapologetically themselves. They don't perform. They don't adjust their personality to win approval. They don't become softer, sweeter, funnier, louder, or more agreeable just to impress her. They live in a state of authentic emotional freedom, and that freedom is intoxicating. See, most men operate from a place of tension when dealing with women. They're trying to get it right, trying to say the right thing, trying to show the right version of themselves, trying not to offend, trying to seem charming, attractive, masculine, smart, cool, anything except the raw version of who they really are. Women sense this performance instantly. They may not call it out, but they feel it. And when a woman feels your personality is engineered to impress her, she automatically sees you as less grounded, less masculine, and less emotionally independent. But the man she can't stop thinking about, the loser in her story, he doesn't perform, he doesn't polish, he doesn't tailor his energy to fit a desired image in her mind. He simply shows up as himself, flaws, quirks, boundaries, edges, humor, intensity, quietness, everything fully unfiltered. This authenticity hits her in a way polished masculinity never could. When you are unapologetically yourself, you're not desperate for approval. You're not watching her reactions to adjust your behavior. You're not asking silently, "Do you like me?" You're not walking on eggshells to avoid rejection. You're not crafting a character to hide your insecurities. Instead, you radiate a grounded, effortless confidence. Because you're not trying to convince her of your value. You already believe in it. This is the energy women crave, but rarely encounter. She loves this kind of man because he gives her a sense of truth. He gives her something solid to feel. He allows the interaction to breathe instead of forcing it. He speaks without fear, jokes without hesitation, and expresses interest without overthinking. And here's the deeper part. When a man is unapologetically himself, it gives HR permission to be herself too. This is where emotional attachment begins. Most men make a woman feel like she has to stay in her social mode, being polite, performing femininity, being a good girl, being impressive, being perfect. But the effortless man, the unpolished loser who doesn't perform, invites her to drop that act. She can be real around him because he's real with her. She can be messy, dramatic, teasing, silly, affectionate, or quiet, and he doesn't flinch. He holds the space. He's not judging. He's not reacting. He's not overthinking. He's simply present. Do you know how rare that feels to a woman? It feels like emotional oxygen. Because authenticity is the deepest masculine leadership. It signals I'm grounded in who I am. I don't need your validation to feel complete. And paradoxically, when a man no longer needs her validation, she gives him more of it. She chases his attention. She invests emotionally. She becomes attached, sometimes intensely attached, because he becomes the one man she can't crack, can't shape, and can't control. This type of masculine presence forces her to meet him at his level. She has to show Eshar real self, not the pretty mask she gives everyone else. And when a woman gives a man that level of vulnerability, she bonds, she attaches, she feels a form of emotional intimacy she rarely experiences. She becomes drawn to him not because he's perfect, but because he's real in a world full of men who are scared to be. And that, more than looks, status, muscles, money, or lines, is what makes her think about him long after he's gone. Women don't become obsessed with the man who performs the best. They become obsessed with the man who performs the least because he's the one their heart recognizes as genuine.